Okay, so I like to frequent this page, Anti-Capitalist Education, and to their credit and respect, thank you very much. They let me post, and they haven't kicked me off yet. I've been posting on here for several weeks at this point, so I'll give them that credit as far as that goes. But this has definitely by far been one of the most absurd and outrageous interactions I've had on this page. So their post reads, "There's not a single thing you need to do to deserve food. You deserve food because you are an alive person." Now, that might feel good to say, but reality is a little bit more nuanced than that, and the implications of these things need to be fleshed out. Because as you see there, my question is, how much of your food do I deserve? Because we have to, whose food? What food are we talking about here? Um, and I'll get into this in a bit. I want to go down here before I go into that because some of these replies, though, have been really absurd. So I guess I'll start with this one. You do know that unless you are growing all your own food yourself, you are eating someone else's hard work, right? It's interesting to me that they would say that because, well, obviously that is why I asked that question, was to show that you don't actually deserve things that other people produced, right? And so that's my yes, I also understand why I have to pay for it because I don't deserve things that other people grew just because I exist, right? That would be slavery. And then they say humans have chosen anything and we chose money, etc., etc. I didn't see these until a few moments ago, and I really don't know where to go from this because this person thinks the world has endless resources, which is just, delusional, in the most maybe blunt way to put it. But we could end starvation if we chose to. I mean, yeah, maybe so. But the problem is that it'd be awesome if everybody just agreed with what I believe and did what I thought was right. Yeah, sure. Then we could end all types of problems in the world. But other people produce food for themselves and their families, and they share it with who they want to, as is their right. Based on the fact that they produced it or traded for it. So it's just interesting to me that they would think that I'm the one who doesn't understand that you're trading for food, that someone else grew the food, and that's why you have to pay for it. I mean, that's the whole point of what I'm saying here. Now, this individual, Mr. Burris, says that this is a fallacy. I don't understand what that means. I just asked a question, claiming that we don't have an abundance of resources, wealth is being hoarded, etc. Um, but so my point to this one is just that abundance is irrelevant, right? So I said if you grow 200 tomato plants, which I put the number up there somewhere where I thought, if he grew them himself, that would clearly be an abundance. He doesn't need, quote, 200 tomato plants. How many of those do I deserve? But of course, their answer is irrelevant because if I deserve it, their say so does not factor in. If they were to stop me from taking any of their surplus, then they would be stopping me from taking from what I deserve, which is food because I exist, right? That is the premise that they've put forth. That's the proposition. And as I say, as with most socialist analysis, it does not actually get into specifics about how any particular person or firm achieved an abundance. And what I mean by that is that you could make an argument where you're extorted by the state through taxation, and then they give that money to some huge farming conglomerate or whatever. You could clearly make the argument that you're entitled to restitution in that sense. But that's very, very different than just saying you deserve food because you exist, with absolutely no qualifiers on who grew the food, where the food came from. Did you grow the food yourself? Obviously, you deserve the food that you grew yourself. That's called a property right. That would be a property right. So, it could be a valid argument if they tried to explain this, but they don't really have much understanding of production and trade, and that's mainly, and they don't understand what property means. So that's why they can't really make nuanced arguments. It's just rich people are bad and you deserve food because you exist. Like I said here, it might feel good to say, but it's ultimately meaningless. Um, and then here's this individual. If I have more than my family can consume, it just seems like common sense to share with people. And that's fine. I basically agree with that. And if I saw some millionaire and he was snubbing his nose at some poor guy who was starving to death and he like literally wouldn't give him a can of beans, I'm going to look at that guy as a scumbag too. But I'm not going to look and say, well, that the homeless person or whoever is entitled to that can, right? If, providing that the more affluent individual is not a thief of some sort. If he actually generated his wealth on the market through voluntary transactions or through self-employment or something, then that's his wealth. Nobody has the right to take that, right? Because it would be slavery. And so I guess at this point here, I'll go up to the ops reply. So my question, how much of your food do I deserve? Are you arguing against the idea that everyone deserves food? And my reply is, I'm arguing against the idea that I am entitled to your food and likewise that you are entitled to mine. And then, of course, by extrapolation, that anyone is entitled to anything that anyone else produced. If someone else grew it, you're not entitled to it. That would be slavery, which should be obvious. And that's the part that about this whole interaction is just blow my mind. Is it's just so cut and dry and straightforward, especially from like a socialist. At least down there, the other guy understood that other people grew the food and that I was trading for it. But like I'm the one who understands that. It seems like the person who made the op doesn't understand it. They don't understand that there could be food out there that other people grew that you are not entitled to, that you do not deserve. But then when you pick and poke, it's like, well, obviously they think that, but they don't really follow that through enough and have it locked into their mind enough because they're against property is what I think. But, and then they say this is the most stupid argument I made, and I made a lot of stupid ones. And it's like, the alternative to this, the alternative to the idea that you do not deserve food that other people grew would be slavery. I mean, just say that out loud. It would say, I deserve food that you grew. That's slavery. And of course, like I said, their post does not contain any qualifiers about like a subsidized corporation or a gang of thieves. Of course, I mean, they're socialists, so they probably just take, quote, capitalism as just it's all being thieves, they're all thieves and such. But like even within that, the context is there is no context of the post. It's just you deserve food because you exist. It's just way too vague and not nuanced enough to make any sense, because food would include food that other people grew. You have the right to the food that you grew and foraged yourself. That's a property right. But as I say, the alternative is slavery, unless you specifically mean the food you grew or foraged yourself. But that's not what this is about. He's not up there complaining about how municipal corporations pass codes that prevent people from growing their own food. They just say, oh, you deserve food because here you are. And I say, well, which food? And then they say I'm making a very weird and large inference. And I don't have to infer it. It is by definition included in the vagueness of the statement that you are entitled to food. Like, food a lot of it does just grow wild, but to mass produce food, that takes people's labor. So whether it's capitalism or socialism or whatever you want to call it, somebody has to labor to produce foods in mass quantities, or foods that don't grow in this particular climate well, or something like this. So there's going to be labor involved in the mass production of food. And because of that, no matter what so-called system you want to call it, if you say that you are entitled to what those other people produced, that is the same as saying that they are your slaves, that a portion or all of their labor is yours. You deserve a portion of what they have produced simply for existing. And then, I hadn't seen this until I was just about to make this video, and then I replied that, if someone else cultivated food, do you deserve it? That's because it seems like they're not, because this says you went from everyone deserves food to that's slavery. And I didn't go from everyone deserves food. You only deserve the food that you produced or traded for voluntarily. Everyone deserves food is just, it's too vague. It's nonsense. It doesn't factor in how food is actually produced in mass scales. Like, there's all types of people working to produce that food and get it to the shelf for you to buy. So somebody, they're just not understanding what property is, I think. So I don't know. This is by far the most bizarre interaction I've had on this page, because to me it seems like it's pretty straightforward. I don't know how else I could describe this in a way that is more clear than what I have done. If someone else grew it, you don't deserve it. Right? That would be slavery. It's just a totally absurd sense of entitlement to say, to just lump this together. You deserve food with absolutely no qualifiers. And then when I try to get more specific, it just, they can't get specific. Are you arguing against the idea that everyone deserves food? Well, I'm arguing against the idea that people deserve food that other people grew. I'm not arguing that, if you go and pick food and forage or grow or cultivate or farm, that you don't deserve that food. You deserve that food. That's your food. You grew it. What do you mean? Or you picked it off the tree that, nobody had previously planted or whatever. So, it just grows wild. You go out there and pick wild berries. Yeah, you deserve that food. What you don't deserve are the berries that the other guy went and picked while you sat in the hut doing nothing or whatever you were doing in this, very primitive economic example. So I'm flabbergasted by this. I mean, I know they're socialists and, they got a picture of Lenin on their page. So they're like really bad socialists, no offense if they ever end up watching this again. Thanks for letting me post on your page. But I mean, at this point, it's like, what's the point? Like, nobody seems to at all understand what I am saying. And somehow I'm the greedy one, according to this other person. Not sure if I even went through that one, but yeah, greed of that type that your comment suggests. Like, I'm the one who understands why you have to pay for food. Like, your comment didn't say that. Well, it's implied, man. Well, it's not. I guess it's not implied because I asked a question. But you would think that me coming here and asking these questions and making this argument, it should be obvious that I understand that why you have to pay for food and why that should be the case if that's what they desire. If they want to give you their food that they grew, then that's their food to give away. And someone else had said, in fact, which I can't find. Oh, there it is. Are you hungry? I'll share my food with you. And that's my reply is that's the only food which you have the right to share generally, right? The post is too vague. You can make an argument about thieving corporations, but the post does not. So, and then here, you deserve your own food. Yeah, sure, I guess. I mean, except if I didn't grow it, it's not mine, which is the whole point of what I'm saying here, right? So, and then our buddy Bill Rogers here, who's quite the character, that guy's just something else. Doesn't really seem to understand anything, but anything that I'm saying anyway, or something, I don't know. But just interesting if anybody has another way to kind of approach this, though. I mean, this is one of the most absurd examples because it's so clear and it's so cut and dry. I can't believe that the reactions that I've gotten from this. I'm interested to see what they reply to that one. If someone else cultivated food, do you deserve it? And it'll probably be like, oh, well, if they have more than what they need to survive. And it's just, that is not the point, right? The point is that they produced it. So if you're going to sit here and say you can only keep as much as you need to survive, then you're saying all of that, quote, surplus labor belongs to everyone else. So you're just another gang of what you call capitalists, taking the excess of what I have produced and stored away in case a drought hits or in case something happens or whatever, that I want to trade. I want to keep some crops that I like to eat, and I want to take the surplus that I don't need to eat and trade it for something else. I can't, apparently everybody else deserves that. If that would be what they say, which I'm going to assume it probably would be because they have made that argument before. But so, yeah, any thoughts, questions, comments, other ways to go about this, things that you think I might be missing or have misargued, or things that, you think might help, let me know. All right. But yeah, you do not deserve food that other people cultivated. That would be slavery. Should be pretty obvious. Don't understand why it's so confusing for these individuals.